Hello and welcome to the CIRS Group podcast. I am Barbara,
And I'm Jacie.
and today we are tackling a brand new biotoxin, never before seen before 2019, I guess. Um, COVID. Was that exciting enough?
Yeah, I told Barbara was asking what I wanted to title this episode, and I said something clickbaity like long haul COVID might have SIRS, something like that. And so now we're just uh taking that idea and making it as extreme as possible.
Yeah, especially since I don't think YouTube bans people anymore for talking about the vid or the vax, but I don't know. I guess we'll test that out today.
Yeah. If you guys suddenly stop hearing from us, YouTube got us.
Yeah, exactly.
Go check us out on other podcast platforms, please. Thank you.
Right. Um, Now, I mean, I think we both have gotten the vid. That's what I call it. COVID, though, at some point, right? You and I.
Yes. So for me personally, I had a bunch of like interactions with the vaccine in 2021. But I myself did not actually get COVID until the beginning of 2022.
Mm. Yeah, me too, actually. I mean, not the vaccine part, but I didn't get COVID until January 2022. That was
Interesting.
when that was when it was really going around and it was kind of like that. Wouldn't they call like Omicron or like some like stupid name? But it was
Sounds
like
like a Power Rangers bad
I
guy.
it really did. But it was like spreading faster and easier, but it was like a little bit weaker, if I remember
Mm,
correctly. But there was something about it where it was a little bit less serious, but it was very contagious. So I think that's where kind of like if you had held out that long, then you were finally gotten at that point. And I think both of
mm,
us were in that cohort. But yeah, so I got COVID and I remember my experience with it was a very, very terrible flu for like 3 days. I did not want to leave the bed. And then about a week after the onset of symptoms, I started to feel better, but then I completely lost my sense of smell and taste. And thankfully it came back in about a month. But it was weird. Like bacon tasted like crunchy water. And like I could pick up my dog's poop and like not even know poop was in my hand in a baggie. Like all of that was very weird. But that
So there
was
were
my
pros and cons.
pros and cons, exactly. I took what I could get out of that situation, but thankfully recovered on my own from what I didn't take any special medication for it at all. I didn't do any kind of protocol. I'm not saying that was necessarily a good idea. Sometimes I think maybe I should have done something or could still do something, but for me personally, I seemed to recover without any extra effort.
Yeah. And before we get into like my experience with COVID and spike protein and all the things, we should say we are not medical professionals. We read the SIRS textbook. We have a community of people who are healing from SIRS. We ourselves have done some healing from SIRS. And that's it. We're not medical professionals. This is not medical advice. Definitely see an appropriate provider if you're looking for some, because we are not it.
Yep. There you go. But yeah, tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so my first real interaction with COVID, and when I talk about COVID, I'm going to talk about it in a way that would produce spike protein. So, actually, backing up a little bit. The reason we're talking about this is because Surviving Mold came out with a paper, it was actually last year, saying that they had kind of identified long haul COVID symptoms and vax injuries as a biotoxin. It acts like any other SIRS biotoxin and it responds to treatment the same way other biotoxins do. So it's very likely that this is a biotoxin. They haven't identified the genetic markers for it yet. There are other genetic markers already related to vaccines, like the Gardasil and the Lyme vaccine. So it wouldn't be like it's not too wildly out of the realm of possibility that they had a suspicion, and that's why they did the research to back it up. But for me personally, what happened was my first interaction with the vaccine was when my partner was vaccinated, and I was staying with them. I was living with them at the time. And then that was when I had my first autoimmune symptom. For me, it was uveitis, and that would have been June of 2021. So after that, I was in a moldy home. I did some pretty extreme leaning out for a fitness competition that I did. And then family members in my home started to get vaccinated. So I was living with my family at the time. All of them were vaccinated. And then my autoimmune symptoms just started to explode. I feel like
Yeah.
explode is the right word. I
Yeah.
had
It got
plantar
really
fascia.
bad really fast.
Yeah,
Like where I would say my experience with SIRS has been this very, very long, gradual, slowly getting worse over time, over the years. Yours was like you were fine 1 month and then you were very much not the next. It was very sudden.
it was very sudden. So all of those symptoms started cascading. And then I had my autoimmune diagnosis, and then I think it was 6 months later after I first started to really crash, I finally learned about SIRS and I started the SIRS protocol. And then about 6 months into the SIRS protocol is when I finally got COVID, and I had my first autoimmune flare, like those same symptoms coming back that I hadn't had since I had started the SIRS treatment. So it seems that my autoimmune condition, which I believe was triggered by SIRS, is specifically triggered when I have interactions with COVID, like whether it be the actual virus itself or vaccinations. That led me to learning about spike protein and spike protein damage protocols. So not to get too much in the weeds here, and I definitely don't want to I'm not going to tell you what I did personally. I did share my protocol in the group itself, but all I did was I followed the FLCCC Alliance protocols. They're pretty well known. A lot of people have done the protocols. Like, I'll randomly bring this up in conversation, and people will be like, "Oh yeah, I did that protocol." Like, people who have nothing to do with SIRS, they have no awareness of SIRS. They just already know about this protocol. So I followed that, and then since I did that, I haven't had an autoimmune flare since. So it really seems like for me, I know because of my genetic haplotypes that mold is a big part of my SIRS diagnosis. It's a biotoxin that I need to be aware of for me, but also COVID in whatever capacity also seems to be one of my like hallmark biotoxins I need to be aware of and avoid.
Yeah. And it's really great to have identified that because, I mean, you would continue to be having flares right now if you hadn't. And the fact that you saw such a specific improvement, the fact that you don't get flares now after you've done it versus before, I mean, that was kind of a repeated, oh God, here comes another one. Like I remember that like that roller coaster you were on before you did the spike protein protocol. And then that finally seemed to be the key to getting it to stop. So really
Yeah.
important.
So I think most people, when we're talking about SIRS, they're really familiar with the mold aspect or actinos. But to me, the harder to diagnose and treat SIRS types are the ones that have co-infections. Like the co-infection is causing your SIRS. So Lyme has historically been that where you have to treat the Lyme in conjunction with the SIRS protocol in order to heal from SIRS. Like you have to get the Lyme out so that you're getting the biotoxin out. We
Right.
know the first step of the protocol is to remove yourself from exposure. So for me, it seemed like the spike protein was my exposure, and I had to get that removed from my body in order to fully heal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild when it's like, am I the problem? Is it me? Is it the
Yeah.
endotoxin in me? Is it and some people are finding out this is unrelated and a different episode, but dental work could also be an issue, and that's literally in you. And then, of course, some people decide, to get their breast implants out because that's causing a problem. So when it's inside you, it's the same as if you are living in a moldy home and you have to remove yourself from that exposure. And it gets tricky when it's inside your body. There's no question about that. But thankfully, I think the spike protein protocol is relatively straightforward. I mean, as far as like all of the inside you biotoxins, it might be my favorite one as far as which one might be easiest to deal with. I don't know.
Yeah, so just for context, if anyone isn't familiar, Lyme is historically very difficult to diagnose. It's so Lyme, like don't fully understand it, but I just imagine it as like this little creature in your body that hibernates for 2 weeks and then it's active for 2 weeks. And for some people, it's very dormant and you have to like drag it out using herbal supplements to get it to flag on blood work to prove that you have Lyme so that you can then do a Lyme treatment protocol. And then there's different kinds of Lyme, and different kinds of Lyme respond to different things differently. And it has to be like active at the time that you're treating. There's just so many caveats to it. And the FLCCC Alliance protocol is just like, it gives you options for one. So depending on what you have access to, you can kind of gear the protocol to that. Definitely, if you can work with your CIRS provider or a provider to complete the protocol, that's probably the most ideal way to do it. And I wish I had had that access, but I was able to do it on my own.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's great.
it's
And
straightforward enough that I can do it on my own, you guys. So you
hey,
could,
hey now.
hey,
No, it is, and we will link to that website in the show notes, so you guys can dig around for that and see if you want to figure it out. But like Jacie said, it is really great if you can get your doctor on board, and even general practitioners might be on board with leading you through it. It doesn't have to be a SIRS doctor necessarily. Now, of course, you still need to treat your SIRS if you have SIRS. That's a separate thing. But I'm just saying, if you want to get started on something, and you're waiting to see your SIRS practitioner, you can ask the doctors in your life currently if they want to lead you through that protocol. Yeah. So, and I have noticed that within the SIRS group, the members have actually also enjoyed the same kind of relief from doing the protocol. So it's kind of cool to see that it does work for different people dealing with different things and different environments. So, and it's a great way to plug our group. So if you are not a member yet of the SIRS group, that's the kind of community support and resources that we get to pull together over there. So join us over at thesursgroup.com.
we'll see you there.